Colleen Quinn from Ricano Associates. She is going to kind of kick off the presentation, and she'll introduce the rest of her staff that are here today. But the way the program will kind of roll is we've got quite a bit of what I call kind of technical information that Colleen and her team will roll through for you, try to kind of get you database. At the conclusion of that, we've got poster boards that are going to be outside, and we're going to invite you to come out to interface with our consultants and also interface with our staff about some of the alternatives, and these are alternatives at this point, what it kind of looks like from a GA standpoint. So it's designed to be engaging in terms of, as we get at those poster boards, about what these things kind of look like for alternatives. So that, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen Quinn, let Colleen kind of kick it off for us.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And good afternoon. Thank you to everyone who's come out today. We appreciate the opportunity to get your input back, show you where we are in the general aviation portion of the master plan, and use this as kind of our springboard as we wrap up and identify the kind of the final preferred alternative coming out of that study. So as Mike said, we really do appreciate and we want your input and your feedback today when we get to that point. We won't go through any questions in here today. We'll kind of save those till we get out in the lobby and look at the boards, and we can look at a lot of this material up close, because we're going to roll through it fairly quickly here. Some of it's a bit dry, but we want to give you that background. So very quickly, we're going to go over not just the alternatives, the ideas that we have for the physical facilities over time, but show you how we got there, some of the things that we took a look at, some of the things we considered as we looked at the future needs, identified and quantified those, and then some of the operational characteristics, some of the drivers for the market, different components like that. So we'll take you through that process, culminate with sharing the alternatives with you fairly quickly in here, and then again we'll retreat to the lobby and look at those much more close-up, large-scale boards, so you can really point and ask questions and let us know your thoughts on it. So where we started out was by conducting an overview of the general aviation industry. And you all will be very familiar, generally speaking, with how volatile the GA industry can be relative to other aviation sectors. External factors can influence general aviation activity quite a bit, whether that's the magnitude of it or the characteristics of it. And this graph just gives you an indication, kind of shows you that relationship over a multi-decade period. And you can see the reaction in general aviation operations, and this is on a national level, kind of nationwide, so the numbers are very large. But the idea being these external factors, you can see that they have an influence on general aviation. So we recognize that. What that highlights for us is that a prudent airport has to have flexibility in their general aviation planning. And that's something you'll hear us come back to a number of times during both this presentation and as we talk through the alternatives. Because the authority has to be able to respond whether activity goes up, goes down, remains flat, changes characteristics, that sort of thing. So one of the things that we take a look at as somewhat of an indicator of the health or the kind of the robust nature of future general aviation activity is aircraft shipments. We look very high level because we don't delve into an agonizing amount of detail. But we do look at it because we consider that to be a marker for us that we want to be aware of to start with. And what we're seeing is that the general indicators, the predictors of aircraft shipments remain positive, not as robust as they've been in the past, but on an upward trend. In general, the trend is upward more strongly for the jet component and the single-engine piston aircraft. Multi-engine piston, turboprop, they're showing negative growth. That doesn't concern us in the sense that overall the growth is positive. We're just seeing some stratification in the nature of that activity. And we just graphed that to kind of provide that visual. It's a lot easier to read charts and tables. But you can see the how the aircraft shipments have changed kind of in response to external factors again, getting back to that graph, and then just the nature of the types of aircraft. So again, we're seeing that upward trend toward the right side of the screen in the jet and the single-engine piston categories, but the others are not dropping off dramatically. They're remaining essentially flat, kind of holding their own. One of the next things that we took a look at is how the FAA views general aviation activity. And they do publish their annual forecasts, their national aerospace forecast. So we look at that for the active aircraft. So this is not just aircraft that exist or plan to be shipped, but those that are active. And we're seeing that there is still kind of the same story reinforced. There is growth. It's perhaps more modest than it has been in years past, but it is still on an upward trend. A lot of that is driven by the business community, the business sector. And of course, that's tied to business, the business climate, economic performance of businesses, things like that. Less so, that translates less so for the small and personal general aviation. But in effect, at the end point to take home is that the active fleet is growing, continues to grow, not at a great rate, but definitely a positive rate. So we see that growth. We anticipate that growth here as well. Another thing that we take a look at is the active general aviation pilots, and of course those fall into a number of categories. But mainly what we're seeing again is growth at the higher end of that, meaning that the larger aircraft, the business, corporate community, more so than at the small aircraft private recreational end. That doesn't mean that we don't see growth in that and that we see that tailing away or going away. It just means that that will grow less robustly, generally speaking, than the higher end of that spectrum. And keep in mind, this is the FAA's forecast, so we're looking at that, we're examining that in our work, but we're not adopting their forecast per se. It just gives us context. So then dropping from the national down to a kind of a more focused look at aviation through the business, kind of business community eyes. We go to a number of sources and look at their analysis of the industry. Of course, they're looking at it for very strong economic reasons and to predict their business, their markets. But looking at this, you can see that there is a positive picture in the business and corporate end, with over 9,000 new aircraft predicted to be shipped to come into service over the next 10 years. That's a pretty robust number. We do think that that's going to be heavier on the front end of that 10-year period, and there's going to be a plateauing or a dropping off to some degree in the latter part of it. But in the near term, we're definitely seeing the growth in that, as well as the kind of the industry is viewing it. You'll notice on the bottom of the chart there that the growth tends to be in the larger aircraft, so larger cabin size, and that just tells us again that the growth will in all likelihood lean toward, but not exclusively be in the business and corporate sector. One more source that we went to, kind of reinforcing some of these same conclusions, and what we look at is aircraft manufacturers' outlooks. And they continue to invest in the development of new products. And these new products are tending toward the longer aircraft ranges as well. So generally, again, with the larger cabin size, we're also seeing increased range, general increased aircraft size and capability. So again, continues to be an upward trend. Then we took a look at the more local. We continue to drill down, and we look more locally now to the region, and specifically the Raleigh-Durham, the Research Triangle area. And one of the things that wouldn't surprise most of you is the market drivers. And these are those factors that are compelling in an aircraft operator's decision in what airport to operate from, where to spend their money on facilities, services, that sort of thing. And as you would expect, the corporate business aircraft are going to have more demanding needs, drivers, than on the small and private GA end. And that's because of course, the larger, more demanding aircraft, but also there's more of a business need. Schedule and reliability become more important. There's more of a discretionary element to much of the personal and recreational flying. So looking at the Raleigh-Durham area, we do continue to see a strong economic foundation for general aviation in this region. Of course, the Research Triangle in and of itself has a strong economic foundation. Population continues to grow, outpacing the U.S. Employment, the same story, outpacing the U.S. Personal income per capita is about the same, the 4+%. It's on par with the U.S. as a whole. But generally a very robust area here in this part of North Carolina. They're supported by your academic institutions. This is North Carolina in the Research Triangle area, specifically one of the more educated communities in the U.S. The statistics we've seen focus on graduate degrees and college degrees and all, but definitely in the leading edge of that path. The Research Triangle Park, that is one of the most well-known, kind of prominent research and development parks in the U.S., and that continues to support a lot of business activity, a lot of growth in the region economically. And technology continues to be a driver here, a lot on the innovative end, and there's a lot of technology clusters emerging that we believe, and economists broadly believe, will continue to underpin the strength, the economic strength of Research Triangle area, the state of North Carolina in particular. So as we look at this, then we step back and look at the other general aviation airports in the, what we call the air trade area for the master plan. And this air trade area is comparable to, it is the Foreign Trade Zone 93. It's a 13-county area. And this was the basis for our overall master plan forecasts. And those forecasts have gone through the FAA review process, they've been approved. So we looked at specifically the airports in this region. And you can see in addition to Raleigh-Durham, there are 9 other airports, 9 general aviation airports in the region. So we took a little bit of a deeper dive into those 9 airports and looking or considering those market drivers that I referenced. You'll see that RDU is the single airport there that hits all of those market drivers. There's another couple that come close. But if you consider, again, the market drivers to be those things that influence decisions on where to base and operate aircraft, you'll see that Raleigh-Durham is the RDU is the most capable airport, if you will, looking at runway length, instrumentation, services, things like that. A number of the other airports very strong, but they are there's a whole spectrum there. Some of them lower on that spectrum. So then looking again at these 10 airports, RDU plus 9, we looked at general aviation operations, and what you're seeing there in this pie chart is that RDU is about where you'd expect it to be in terms of the number of GA operations relative to other airports in the vicinity. Those more capable GA airports are accommodating about the same amount of activity as RDU does. But then when we drill a little bit deeper into this and we look at the based aircraft, now you begin to see more stratification among these airports. And what you see looking at the pie chart all the way on the right is that RDU is accommodating those larger, more capable, more demanding business type, corporate type aircraft. And that's as you might expect because it's a very capable airfield, and it has the facilities here to accommodate those types and sizes of aircraft. Meaning the airport does accommodate base aircraft across the entire spectrum of aircraft size. So it's not to just say that corporate aviation is the focus, but RDU is the strongest, essentially in that area. When we look at the forecast that is part of the GA forecast, part of the larger forecast for the master plan, and what we're showing here is we didn't present annual operations because that's a little bit a drier number. This is perhaps in more meaningful daily operations at RDU. And we are seeing just about 0.5% growth on a continual basis over the 25 years. So again, creeping upward, not growing at a robust rate, but also very much holding its own and trending upward. Looking at the forecast, not just of activity, but the based aircraft, you'll see that too trends upward along with the operations. And you can see on this graph that we've got a couple of black lines, darker lines. Those are a high forecast and a low forecast. And that was an exercise we undertook as part of the broader overall forecasting to say that the base forecast, the baseline forecast, which is the colored bars, that is our best assessment of what the future holds, our best educated guess, if you will, what the future holds. But there can be drivers that push those numbers up or push those numbers down. The baseline forecast is the one that the FAA approves, but we do, again, kind of test the upper and lower bound because we're looking at facility planning, physical planning. And so we need to make sure that there's enough flexibility in the plan so that if the airport grows on the high curve, that activity and those facilities can be accommodated, but also that if the airport were to grow on the low curve, that there's not an overcommitment too early to physical facilities that may not be needed until later time frame. So that's what we do with the upper and lower. But we do all our physical planning to the high forecast to make sure that we can accommodate that physical requirement over the planning horizon. Doesn't commit the authority to building that many facilities, make sure that they can. So when I look at kind of concluding from this overview, this analytic approach, before we jump into the more specific alternatives and components, kind of reach some overall conclusions that drove our physical planning efforts. And one of those is, the first one there is that, you've heard me say it a couple of times, that the general aviation activity continues to grow, both at a national level, but very specifically at the Raleigh-Durham as well. We continue to see that will influence your facilities over time. Again, we're probably going to see that growth stronger in the larger business corporate end of the GA spectrum. There's actually a predicted kind of downturn in personnel in the student pilot. And so those are indicators of smaller facility need. That may diminish. That doesn't mean it's going to go away. It just may mean that growth in that area may not occur as quickly. Business is going to kind of be one of the drivers predicted based on the analysis so far. Again, those are trending toward the larger aircraft, so not only more and more capable aircraft, but a bit larger. And RDU is, as we walk through those 9 airports quickly, RDU is positioned to best accommodate a lot of that higher end demand and our more specific performance aircraft, the larger aircraft, and the bigger facilities go along with that. So we're going to get into the alternatives here, and Julie Kenfield from our team is going to walk through these specifically. So we're going to go through them relatively quickly now, but we'll, again, have these boards out there, large scale. You can ask us all kinds of questions about them. But we just wanted to kind of tee up each of them so you get an overview of the full set of alternatives before we talk out of the boards. So with that, I'll let Julie take over.
So as Colleen noted, we planned our facilities based on the high scenario. Within those scenarios, we accounted for the demand, the waiting lists that we gathered, information that we gathered from tenants. So we factored that in even on the baseline forecast so that we really met what we thought the current demand was in the first year and grew that. In addition, we know that a number of folks have come to the authority and requested facilities of some type or another. And so we looked at a surge level beyond that with the higher end aircraft jets to be able to accommodate those. So we're looking at those things as we develop our plans. And then additionally, through discussions with the authority, it started to make sense that we develop separate campuses, if you will, for different elements of GA. A campus for those who want an FBO to accommodate their aircraft and their activities, a campus for small aircraft, T-hangars and small box hangars, and a campus, business aviation campus, so that those activities had a sense of place, a presence, and functionally were separate. Again, the goal that I think Colleen has brought up, and you'll see throughout these, is that we have flexibility so that the authority can respond to needs as they come in, but has a plan for overall growth to be able to develop the facilities to the highest and best use. So for the central GA campus, the FBO area, we've looked at reducing the smaller aircraft in that area, reducing those hangars, and putting more line-type hangars or larger hangars in there. Could be hangar space, could be office space, could be offices for maybe flight departments from tenants, could be a charter activity. There's flexibility, don't get hung up on the layout here, because there's flexibility to move things around. And what you're seeing are the results of lots of moving things around, because, and we threw out most of those and are only showing you some of them, but we still have some refinement to go. So that's why we wanted to talk to you about this. So there's a large variety of activity that these could support. What you can't see very well is we are taking out, in addition, the far west row of hangars, the upper ones on your screen, to be parking to support the additional line hangars that we're putting in. The executive hangars on the north end are proposed to stay in this plan. So where do the small guys go? Well, we're looking at an East GA campus, and this is across from the guard, down the end of the crosswind runway. New roads accessing it, you'll see the green lines are roads, and a plethora of new hangars. We've shown box hangars here in sizes that are comparable to kind of mid-sized T hangars up to larger, say 65 by 65 boxes. We've got a larger set of 100 by 100 hangars for those who might want a larger facility, and then a larger hangar that could be community or offices, management facility to support that. There would be fuel in this location, possibly self-fueling in an area that's the pink area that you see adjacent. We've got parking all around it, new roadway access from the north via Commerce, an extension of Commerce, or from the south via an extension of Military Highway. We looked at several alternatives for the North GA campus, which would be the business campus. We're showing you some of the final ones. Again, still tweaks available and opportunities based on your comments to move buildings around. I think the key in this area, as you all know, is what can we develop? What can be developed now? How does that work with the long-term plan? How does that work when, if the runway is pushed out and reconstructed? So you'll see that we can capture a little more area for this function in that area by relocating International Drive on the bottom part of your picture, the green line, and developing some taxiway infrastructure. This is shown for the future runway condition, but we're looking at options to be able to develop that with the existing condition and tie off of that taxiway that serves SAS. These hangars, the smallest ones, are 100 by 100 blocks. Then we've got some larger ones that are 140 by 140, and the largest are about 150 by 250. Recognizing we're working in planning blocks because we need to assign some prices to this and a kind of block pricing so that we can understand what the implications of this plan are and we can advise the authority on that. We know for a fact that this area won't look like any of these plans once it's developed because it will respond to the needs of the tenants, prospective tenants that want to come in and develop. So the idea in looking through all of these concepts was to say, okay, what flexibility do we have? How do we develop this? One thing I want to point out on all of these is we have fuel in all of them. So that one had a lot of smaller hangars. This one has a few larger hangars. In fact, more of a line hangar that could be used maybe for a charter operation or a high-end FBO. This one has all moderately sized large hangars. Again, you could accommodate large, long-range aircraft in these layouts. So, as I said, these are, while we feel like these represent various options, we're definitely open to your comments, and we want your comments on these, and that's why we want to have the boards out here and have an open discussion about what looks good to you, what looks bad to you, what absolutely won't work. I know there are probably for everybody sitting in this room, there are that many goals and objectives about what you want for your aircraft. I just have been through a series of meetings with general aviation tenants at another airport, and everybody had a different opinion about things. And so I know you want something that suits your business, and that's why we want to give the authorities some flexibility. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen so she can talk a little bit about infrastructure development.
Okay, as Julie said, and as we get into to this kind of wrap-up portion of the discussion, really one of the key words for us is flexibility. And none of the ideas that you saw in those graphics, those are all exactly that, ideas. Those are concepts that lend themselves to organized development over time. And there's absolutely no reason that you can't see something different develop in those areas that we have replicated up here. So what we have done in exploring those alternatives is map out the capabilities of the various sites, look at how we might stratify the activity by aircraft size and type and by the nature of operations. But there's absolutely nothing fixed. So as you do look at these boards and as you engage us out in the lobby, keep that in mind. We want to get your feedback because there is that level of flexibility. And what we need to do in documenting the master plan is ensure we protect that so that as the actual need emerges, whether that's existing tenants, prospective tenants, or just inquiries in general, the authority will know exactly how they could accommodate that in an organized way. So you hear us use this word flexibility over and over, and the idea there is that we need to provide that space and we need to provide access, whether it's landside access, airside access. We need to make sure that there's a level of organization to the overall campus, and we're using the phrase campus because that lends itself to incremental development. It's hard for us to picture that there would be a substantial, large program to rework the entire general aviation campus in one fell swoop. We see that as incremental development over time, And the benefit to that is it allows the authority to respond to exact inquiries, expressions of interest, demonstrated need, and things like that. So we'll keep going back to that idea of flexibility over and over. We have forecast the requirements. So we've talked to you about how we worked on the high scenario and protected those. As part of that, we do recognize that there's what we call latent demand. There's kind of pent-up demand, and that the authority has had for some time received some expressions of interest and inquiry. So we do accommodate that in planning. That's rolled into our numbers. But the best planning that we can do, we have to recognize that there will be a natural evolution over this 25-year horizon. There will be a natural evolution in the type and size of aircraft that operate here. We'll do our best, but we cannot predict at 25 years exactly what the composition of general aviation will be here. Again, that takes us back to this need for flexibility in protecting that. And we also, as we looked at these alternatives, we had to make sure that we kept them in context. So understanding the surrounding facilities, other activity at the airport, whether we'd be looking at infill, one-off type development versus kind of redevelopment on a broader scale. We looked at all of that. And at the end of the day, what actually happens is going to be driven by a combination of factors. Those will include business priorities, the levels of investment that are needed, the returns on that investment, the business climate, available resources, the prospective tenant needs specifically. So there will be a lot of influence on what is ultimately developed, and you all will provide that influence when the time comes and when there is a need to develop either new or replacement facilities to add on, to expand, those sorts of things. So again, flexibility being one of our kind of our key words. We did look at kind of the business side of GA development because we have to. Where we are today is in that upper left box. We're starting out, there are existing facilities and existing demand, and we know what both of those are, the characteristics of them, the magnitude. But again, we're looking 25 years out, so we're going to see increases in demand, again, that upward trend in all sectors of general aviation, but more strongly on the business end. And then we look at the economic realities, right, what the authority will face. And that is, there's quite a bit of diversity in the user base at the airport, not just within general aviation, but all the way up through commercial and scheduled aviation and a lot in between. That diversity of users brings a diversity of facility need. The authority also has some very big challenges on their hands as they look at their expenditures over the coming years to maintain existing facilities. So not talking hangars or airline facilities, airfield facilities, and spending a lot of money on runway replacement and rehab. So really what this is saying is the authority has a lot more demand than resource, and that's just an economic reality. So that will factor into the larger picture for all facilities as decisions are made on what to implement. So when we look at that economic reality, we kind of map two main paths. One on the left there is essentially saying if the authority stays where they are with general aviation facilities, maintains those, what exists today, maintain that till those facilities reach essentially the end of their useful economic life, or whatever number of years out that is. For some facilities, it's nearer than for others. But that's kind of a baseline where that would be the minimum that the authority could look at in that scenario. But that's not accommodating growth. That's not facilitating more activity, more base aircraft here. So we look at the other end of that spectrum, off to the right, and we say what has to happen in terms of a business scenario to meet new demand. And we can look at that several different ways. We've identified kind of the three main headings, if you will. And one is a more traditional approach, kind of a conventional approach at many airports, and that is that the authority could make the investment, but then they would look to have a neutral, ideally a neutral or a positive ROI on that investment, because there is, again, more need than there is resource on the overall on the authority facilities. We can step back from that a little bit and say what would happen if there was some private money coming in, so a public-private partnership, a P3, and that would bring the opportunity for outside money to supplement what the authority could commit. And again, looking for that neutral or positive ROI. So you can see here that there's kind of a strong business component to this decision-making process of what's ultimately built. But again, moving all the way to the right hand there, and it could be a completely privatized type of development. And that would be more hands-off, if you will, for the authority, but certainly the land is made available and then the private money kind of rolls into that, and they generate their own ROI. So we mapped these scenarios because this essentially is the reality for the authority. And as we get into the ultimate plans, we're not advocating one or another of these business scenarios. What we're saying is that these are out there, these are ways to approach this. And as decisions are made, the authority will make each of those uniquely, individually, based on the various business influences at the time. So our approach essentially to what you'll see out there is we're recognizing kind of that higher end of the market because they're more demanding in terms of footprint and capability, but by no stretch are we ignoring or displacing called the lower end, the smaller general aviation aircraft. We're just seeing a way to stratify those facilities that operationally make sense. Again, we're preserving flexibility, but we're doing this in an organized way so that decisions can be made that add up to a cohesive idea or concept over time, right? That it's not haphazard, it's not a lot of one-off type improvements, but it's organized, it's logical. Going along with that, development standards go a long way toward keeping that continuity in that, keeping that some level of similarity as needed, operational similarity as well as business similarity. And again, as I indicated, the focus on the campus environment provides essentially that best long-term picture because it's not obligated to get there all in one step. So that's the background on what we've done. And we'll retreat at this point to the boards and we can allow each of you to ask whatever questions you have on an individual basis. And I think it's easiest done with kind of the pictures in front of us. But we wanted to give you this background before we went out there so you understood how we approached this, how we were thinking about it, and how we got to these concepts that you're seeing. And again, they're concepts, they're not plans, they're not programs, they're not exactly what will be built, but they are good indicators of what could be built. So with that, thanks for coming out tonight, and we'll meet up with everyone out here.
Hey, Colin, one second, before you walk out. So let me identify a couple of people so you know who's in the audience. First of all, in the front row is former chairman of the board, now currently the chair of the operations committee, Mr. Tommy Hunt. He's currently on our board, so he's available to talk to. Mr. Bill Sanford, he's our senior vice president, chief operating officer. In the back is Dwayne Legan. He is our vice president of airport operations. Next to him is Chuck McFall. He's our senior vice president, chief revenue officer. In front of them, I've got two. One is the director of properties, which is Karen Quinn Reynolds, which a lot of you probably will deal with. Next to her is our director of marketing. Can't think of his name. Sorry, Dan. And sitting up front is I've got our vice president of communications, community affairs, Christy, and also Armando, who handles all of our noise, so he helps educate the community about the benefit of aviation. If I miss anybody from our staff, maybe all? Oh. And there's Matt. Matt handles all of our communications from the video and also from the website standpoint. So lots of people from RDU that are here. We've got consultants here as well. We're going to be out there, want to engage you in a conversation. So you might like, some you might not like. Communicate with us. Tell us what you think. We're here tonight to listen to you. Okay? Anything else, Colin?
No, that's it. Yeah, thank you.